Good afternoon, everybody. It is Wednesday, December 2nd at 3 p.m., and this is the Women in Business podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about social media. Now, originally, the plan was that I was going to show a bunch of articles that I had written in the past and share them with you and tell you what some of the contents were and why I wrote that particular article and all that sort of thing. Now, here's the deal with that. When I went today to start putting this together, I found out that a lot of the articles are no longer there, which was a bummer and kind of a good thing, if that makes any sense. A bummer because obviously it's sad that the original content is gone. A good thing because one of the things that I was thinking about doing was putting together an ebook with a lot of the social media tips and things that I've written about over the years. And now I know that some of that content is no longer extant, which means that a book would be a lot more interesting for people because the content isn't available elsewhere. So I guess, the world takes with one hand and gives with the other. So whatever you want to, I guess that's how you kind of have to look at it. But in any case, what I am going to talk about today is some various aspects of social media that I think will be helpful for people. This is a continuation somewhat of the Tuesday Tools broadcast that Carolyn Cagle and I did yesterday. The idea is basically to just expand on some of the points we talked about yesterday, talk about some new things. One of the things I do want to talk about today, because I happened to come across it when I was looking for content ideas, was a piece that I wrote at one point about how to get your social media accounts ready for the beginning of the new year. So you start off with a bang and with everything ready to go. So I'm probably going to cover at least some of that today. Certainly, as always, willing to answer any questions that you all might have. And we're just going to take it as it comes and see what happens. If you do want to see work that I have done, some of it is still there. And you can see it at my website, KristineShreve.com. The page is called My Work, originally enough. And some of it is still available and you can go to the links. Other links no longer are available, and I'm going to have to do some research and see if I can find the content in another format. What happened apparently is when printware became Graphics Pro, they just wiped out all the printware stuff. So a lot of the stuff that I wrote for printware that had been on their website is now no longer there, obviously. So that appears to be what happened. But check out the page. I have links to blogs I've written. Some of the links to articles are still there. Links to podcasts I've been in, video casts I've been in. It does need to be updated. I'll freely admit that. I'm working on that. I just finished the Women in Business podcast page on the website yesterday, so I'm not the fastest, but I'm trying. Anyway, one of the things that did survive the purge, apparently, was an article that I've always really liked, so I'm kind of glad this one stayed around, and it is about Pinterest. And it appeared, now this is granted a little older, this appeared I think in 2013, if I remember correctly. But one of the reasons that I wrote this article, and one of the reasons that I felt strongly about what I wrote, is exactly what the title says here. Pinterest is a decorator's best friend. And I think of all the social media platforms that people use, Pinterest is one of the ones that is the most neglected by decorators, which makes no sense to me because Pinterest is really tailor-made for decorators. And basically what this article says is Pinterest is something that decorators should be using, and here's why. One of the reasons is that Pinterest is aspirational. That means people go there because they're looking for ideas. They're looking for ideas for their party. They're looking for ideas for decorating their house. They're looking for ideas for the family reunion they're planning or the birthday party they're doing, or they're looking for ideas for their bridal shower gift or a gift for their bridal party or whatever it is. And a lot of people, when they're planning something, they put a board together and then they save ideas. So if you have boards on Pinterest, and if you have particular things you'd like to sell, like if you have a, if you make cups, for instance, and you'd like to do a line of cups that people could use for their bridal parties, then you put together a board that talks about bridal party gifts or, bridal party ideas or something. And then you put the cups in there and you show what you can do. And then people who are looking for that particular thing come upon your board, and right there are pins that they can save to their boards to remind them that, number one, you do this particular thing, whatever it is, and who you are. And when they go back looking to buy, then you're there already on their radar and in their board. So this is Pinterest to me is like, it's like shopping for customers almost, in a way, if that makes any sense. You're putting your best foot forward, you're curating the material for the customers who are looking for it, and you're making it as easy as possible for them to find your stuff, understand what you're doing, and save it so they can come back and buy it later. Now, the way you do this is by creating boards with a specific subject. And your subject could be, something as simple as t-shirts for family reunions, or ways to commemorate a special birthday, or whatever it is that you make and you want to do, or kitchen decor, or gag gifts for a family party. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and you just need to really look at what your capabilities are, and figure out the niche that you want to occupy, and then create a board, the appropriate board. And there's a couple comments here I want to share. Becky says, why have I not thought about this in this way? I pin mine under a board for my business. Would make more sense to create boards geared towards what the items are. Yes, exactly. If you're just doing a gigantic board that's your business, the chances are much less likely that people looking for a specific thing are going to find what they're looking for. And also, you have to remember that part of your job as a business owner is to educate your customers. So if you create boards that give them ideas for things, like, okay, let's take wedding party. So, standard wedding party stuff, I don't know. It's been a while since I've been in a wedding party, but I mean, cups, maybe you do sashes, maybe you do shirts, whatever it is. But people who are getting married may not know what they want either. So if you put a board together that's geared specifically toward wedding parties and show all the various things you can do, then you're solving a problem for them, and you're presenting them with a one-stop way to get what they need and something cool. And they don't have to do a lot of work to make that happen. And that's a huge thing when you're trying to make a sale. Make it as easy as you can for the customer. So give them a targeted board. Now, granted, this means your target market is going to be smaller, but when they find your board, they're going to be looking for exactly what you're offering. So smaller market, but market that's more motivated to buy what you have to offer. So this makes sense. And Cindy, I have to laugh at this. Cindy King says, I used to love to look at Pinterest. I just do not have time to look lately. I totally get that. I can fall down the Pinterest rabbit hole too, and that's something you have to be careful of. You're on Pinterest to create your own boards, not to make boards for other things. I am in the process of thinking about creating a set for this podcast and doing some redecorating in my house, and I can fall down the Pinterest rabbit hole of room decor for like a year. So I try not to do that. But so one thing about Pinterest is that you can create specific boards, and the specific boards will guide your customers where you want them to go. Now, some caveats to this. First one, Pinterest is so much about pictures, like hugely about pictures. So make sure that you take the best possible pictures you can take. I mean, it's worth it. I would say it's worth it to invest in maybe having a professional take your pictures, or invest in the best camera equipment that you can afford to be able to take the best pictures you can, because Pinterest is all about pictures. So you don't want to use stock photos if you can avoid it. You want to stage your items. You don't just want to take a picture of the thing. You want to kind of do a lifestyle shot of it. A lot of these tips will work for Etsy too. So if you sell on Etsy as well, you can get double duty with some of these pictures maybe by staging them. So that's something to think about too. The other thing about Pinterest, and this is something that I'm going to pull this out of here now. This is something that I would recommend for any social media platform that you're going to be using, but you want to have a business Pinterest account. And you can go to business.pinterest.com, as it says there on the banner, and set up a business account. Now, the difference between a business account and a personal account is a business account is going to have more tools to help you do what you want to do. And what I mean by that is, on a personal account, you just have an account, and you're just kind of there to save. A personal account is more for you to save ideas for things that you want to do. It's not necessarily there for you to sell to other people. A business Pinterest account is there for you to sell to other people. And so they offer you a couple of things that are really valuable. One is they give you much better statistics, which is a hard word to say. I never can say it in a way that I feel is proper. But they give you information on who's viewing your pins, who's saving your pins, things like what time of day maybe pins show up better, which boards are getting more attention, which boards aren't getting as much attention, all that kind of stuff. So you end up with some relevant data that will help you pin better in the future and create better pins. So it's definitely worth having a business account for that. The other thing that a business account will give you is the ability to sell right off a pin. There are a couple, now I have to admit, I haven't checked this out like really recently, but last time I did check it out, there were a couple different ways. Rich Pins was one, and I believe there was another way. Where you could set up your pins. So if somebody saw something and they went, oh, I want that, they could buy it right off the pin, like right then, which is huge because Pinterest didn't used to have that ability. So you had to have somebody save a pin and then hope that they would click it and go to your website. But now there is the option to actually buy right off the pin. You have to be approved for that. I believe there are certain categories for that. But if you sign up for a business account, you can get all the information on that and figure out how it's working these days. I think that's hugely invaluable if you want to use Pinterest as one of your selling mechanisms, because like I said, the customer sees the thing and they have the ability to purchase the product right then. They don't have to go to another place. They don't have to save it to a board. They don't have to click it. Well, I think they have to click it to purchase, but you know, they don't have to go to another place and have a more long drawn out buying process. And you know, buying something on a whim is a time honored tradition. So if it's there and available and they can just click it and go, then yay, we've made money, or you've made money. And that's the whole goal of this, if you're using a social media platform for business. So my feeling, it was true in 2013. It's true at the end of 2020. I feel like Pinterest is probably the most neglected social media platform when it comes to how decorators use it. And a lot of that is just because I think when Pinterest started out, it was very much just a curation site. It was very much just you make boards and you stick things on them. They have evolved it quite a bit, especially when they caught on to the fact that businesses would want to use it. And so now they're offering things like rich pins and other ways to buy and better demographics and things that help businesses sell. So it's definitely worth taking the time to go. And like I said, if you're going to do this for your business, you want to go to business.pinterest.com and create an account. And if you already have an account for your business, if I remember correctly, because I think I did this for Enmart, you can upgrade your account to a business account without having to start a new account, if I remember correctly. And I think that's what I did with Enmart. And basically all it does is it just gives you a slightly different designation. And like I said, you get the other tools and things that are not available to personal accounts. So I think it's worth it. I really do feel like every business owner should be on Pinterest. That's my feeling. But I understand for some people it just isn't their thing. And that's really honestly the next thing that I want to talk about, which is something that I talked about yesterday, but I feel so strongly about it, I want to kind of reiterate it again, which is pick your platforms carefully. You don't have to be everywhere. You want to be where your audience is. And a lot of times, there are a lot of so-called experts out there, and I am not in any way claiming to be an expert on all this stuff. I mean, I'll admit there's things that I don't know. I've spent a lot of time working on this. I've written a lot about it. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, but I don't claim to be an expert. But there are people out there who will tell you that, everybody should be on Instagram, or the hot new platform is TikTok, or whatever it is. And it's like, that may be, yes, there are businesses that are having success on TikTok. There are businesses that are having success on Instagram. There are businesses that are having success on Facebook. As I know from my own experience, if you have an article to write or a column to write or so many column inches to fill or so many words you have to write, you have to come up with something to write. So sometimes what you come up with is everybody has to be on Instagram. Which isn't necessarily accurate. I don't think everybody has to be anywhere. I think you need to know your audience. And once you know your audience, then you'll figure out where they are, and that's where you need to be. And it seems pretty simple when I say it like that, but it isn't as simple to a lot of people, I don't think, as it sounds. A lot of people just assume they need to be everywhere. And the problem with that is the more accounts you have, the more time you have to spend keeping them up if you're going to be successful. And if you don't know where your target market is, then you could be talking on the entirely wrong platform to the entirely wrong people. So you need to first and foremost, and I will say this a million times and you'll probably get tired of hearing me say it, but you need to know where your audience is. You need to know who your audience is. And then you need to know where they're going on social media. Because if you're wasting your time talking to the wrong people on the wrong platform, you're not going to get the results you want. And then you become one of those people who says, social media doesn't work. I don't know why people do it. Well, social media works. It just takes some effort. And you need to put some thought into it. And you need to put some time into it. And that's all. I don't know what the right word is. It's a little bit disillusioning maybe, because I think a lot of people think that all they have to do is put an account up and put a couple of buy my stuff messages on it, and everybody's going to go, yay, we've been waiting for this, and they're going to give you all their money. Which is awesome, and if it worked that way, that would be amazing. It doesn't, though, which is kind of sad. But the reality is you have to figure out who your target market is. You have to figure out who you want to talk to, and you have to figure out where they are. And then once you've done that, you can set up your accounts and set up business accounts. And I'm going to show you here that every platform, facebook.com/business for Facebook, Pinterest, I already showed you, business.twitter.com for Twitter, and business.instagram.com for Instagram. Now, again, is it a huge thing if you don't have a business account? I think so, yeah. Honestly, I kind of do. Because I think the business account gives you the tools you need to be able to know what's working and what's not, and to be able to see what your response is, and to be able to understand how your posts are working and who's interacting with them, and who your customers are, and what times of day are they more responsive, and what times of day are they less responsive, and all that kind of thing. It's all data that helps you post in the most efficient and most effective manner. If you can't see that data, then you're just throwing darts at the wall, and you're hoping that you get it right. And I mean, yeah, theoretically, you could just watch the account really closely and figure things out just by watching, but that's a lot more time consuming, and I don't know that it's the best use of your time when you can have a business account and you can get a lot of these demographics and a lot of this information without really having to do anything other than post. So that is why I recommend business pages. I think they are definitely worth signing up for and using. I will say unequivocally, I don't even know if that's a word. I will say, without exception, if you have a business, you should have a business profile and a business page. Don't use your personal profile for your business. That just confuses people, and it doesn't give you the same ability to do certain things, at least on Facebook. So I would say have a page and not a profile for your business. Now, one of the things I do want to talk about, since when I was going through things today, I uncovered some stuff that I'd forgotten I'd written. And one of the things that I had written at some point was a end of the year kind of checklist for stuff to do if you're, if you want to start off the next year with a bang, so to speak. So what I want to talk about now a little bit is just some things you can do at the end of the year that will help you be positioned so that when 2021 comes around, you're ready to fire on all cylinders with all your social media platforms. So one of the things you want to look at is pruning your followers. And I know from the discussion we had yesterday, and I know from things people have said, that the idea of letting go of followers is anathema to some people. They just don't see how that could ever be a good thing or why that would be smart. Here's why it's smart. Because not everybody that's following you is a person. There are a lot of bots out there. There are a lot of clickbait people that are just sitting somewhere, mostly in, Taiwan or Thailand or wherever it is, and they're just following people's profiles. I don't really understand the theory behind that. I'm not sure why, but I do know it happens, and I know there are certain areas of the world where like Indonesia or India, where a lot of click farms operate. And so if you look at who's following you and you're seeing a lot of people from Indonesia or a lot of people from India, you may want to get rid of those profiles, because you may want to get rid of those followers because they're not doing you any good, and they're not raising your status, so to speak. And I think Pilar brought this up when we were talking yesterday, that, you know, the more likes and clicks and follows you get, then the more relevant you are, at least on Facebook and probably on most platforms. And she isn't entirely wrong. Like I said yesterday, I'm a little bit skeptical as to how much the platforms take that into account, but I do know that followers that they consider bad followers can be counted against you. If most of your follower count is click farm bait, is click farm people, then it's not going to do you any more good. It's not going to do you any good. You just might as well get rid of it, and that may even help you. Because one of the things that most of the sites look at for in the algorithms when they're considering whether your account is a good account and whether your account is an account that should be shared with more people is, what's the validity of it? Who's following you? Who's interested in you? Who's responding to you? Do you have a huge follower count but nobody ever says anything on your page? Then that's going to have a different reaction than maybe a smaller follower count of people who interact with you consistently. So that's something you need to look at too. And if you have a lot of followers that are click farm bait, that are bots, that are, you know, that are just there and never do anything, then they're not really helping you. So you might as well just get rid of them. And I mean, really the status you want to look at really is who's engaging with your page, who's commenting, who's liking, whose name do you recognize, who do you see fairly consistently. If you have a ton of followers that you've never seen them, they've never done anything, they're just kind of there, they're zombie followers, so to speak, then it's not worth it. You might as well just get rid of them because they're not helping you and they could be hurting you. Now, the other half of this, and this is another thing that I am a huge advocate of, building a community on social media. I think there's a reason that the first word in social media is social. It's about making connections. So you want to, but it's about making connections when you're doing social media from a business standpoint. It's about making connections with the right people. And I said this yesterday, and I'll say this again today. I know it sounds very kind of cold-hearted. It sounds almost a little like you're using people. But I don't think it's like that. I think that it's business, and it's just like you're not going to do business with the guy who doesn't sell the product that you want. You're maybe not going to be friends on Facebook with somebody who isn't a customer of yours or who can't offer you knowledge or whatever it is that you need. So it really comes down to looking at your follower, friend, and like list and going, okay, how is this helping my business goals? How is this helping me get to where I want to get to? Our success group has that whole success tracker program where people are putting their goals out there and they're saying, you know, I want to have this many followers and I want to have this many friends. And the question, or I want to have this many likes on my page or this many people in my group or whatever it is. And the question is, why? What does that get you? And is it just the number, or is it the people that can help your business get to where it needs to be, either by contributing information, by making a purchase, by having a follower count of their own that they can share your information with and perhaps bring you some more customers? All those things are important. And one of the things that people do when they're starting out on a social media platform is they tend to follow everybody indiscriminately because they're just trying to make contacts, or they tend to hook up with a lot of friends and family because that's an easy way to get some people on the board quickly. And nothing, well, I'm not going to say nothing wrong with that. Personally, I think that's kind of a waste of time. I think you need to be strategic about it. One of the things that I've talked a lot in my articles over the years, one of the things that I think is a major tenet of how to do social media for business well is something called strategic following. And strategic following basically means figure out who is going to be helpful to you. Figure out who your target market is. Figure out what competitors you want to follow. And yes, you should follow your competitors, not only because you can get ideas from what they're doing, but you can also see what the pain points are for their customers, and then maybe you can solve those and their customers will become your customers. And the argument I get whenever I say, yes, you should follow your competitors is people say, well, then they'll know what I'm doing. And my answer to that is usually, so you'll know what they're doing too. I mean, it's not honestly like anything you're doing is going to be such a huge secret that your competitors can't know. If there's something that they shouldn't know, don't put it on social media, which seems like fairly common sense, but maybe not, because some people don't necessarily get that. So I always recommend following your competitors. Let's see. And we do have a Facebook user. For some reason, Facebook is weird about showing names. StreamYard.com/Facebook, you can give them permission to show your name, but you may have already done that and they might still be being bulky. But if you haven't, StreamYard.com/Facebook. But to answer the question, what about joining local community groups as your business page on Facebook? Is this something that would help or not? Okay. First question in answer to this question, I guess, would be, are you selling in your community or not? If you're selling in your community, joining a local community group as your business page may be helpful. If your target market is people in your community, then yeah, this could make a certain amount of sense. One of the things I would do before I join the group is check and see what their policies are, because some groups, women in garment decoration would be one of them. We are against selling. We don't allow that. But by the same token, even if the group doesn't allow selling, if your target market is your local community, joining the group and interacting with people and making friends and getting to know people and creating trust, then you can build a community and then take the people over to your page and sell to them. So, okay, and it looks like this was Shannon's question. I've done the StreamYard thing. Yes, I can see that because I can see your name now. And yes, selling local. Okay, if you're selling local, yes, joining a local community group may be a good idea. Like I said, check the policies and see if they allow selling or what the line is. And then also go into it with the idea that it's not necessarily about selling. It's about meeting people. It's about creating connections with other business owners. It's about creating connections with potential customers. It's about developing a reputation as somebody who's a good community citizen, somebody that people know and trust. I said this yesterday too, but I think it bears repeating. There have been numerous studies done that say that people are more likely to buy from people and companies they trust and feel that they know. So if you're in a community group and you're interacting about community events and issues in the community or whatever it is, and you're creating a community around your business, and you're building relationships with business owners who may be potential customers or just may be able to steer customers your way, yeah, I totally think it's worth it. Like I said, though, make sure that you check the rules and you understand what's allowable and what's not. Because there's nothing worse, and I say this as someone who runs a group and has been a member of a number of groups, there's nothing worse than people that come in and just ignore the rules. And they're clearly only there because they want your money. So yes, you've got it exactly right here, Shannon. I like this. I agree. Use it to build relationships, not really for selling. You summed it all up in one little sentence there. I like that. And you're exactly right. It's about building relationships. Now, hopefully what happens with those relationships is that the relationship develops into a customer provider relationship, if that's appropriate. But the only way that you can make that happen is if you create a relationship first. If you just go in there and all you're doing is stomping around going, I got stuff and you need to give me money, then, you know, you've screwed yourself before you even get started, basically, because most people don't like to be sold hard. They don't like it when it's blatantly evident that you just want their money and you don't care, particularly on something like social media. I mean, obviously when you go to a store, when someone comes, but even when you go to a store, or even if someone comes into your business and says, I would like to buy X, they want to be treated like a person. They don't want to be treated like a wallet. So you have to be aware of that. And social media is a great place. Groups can be a great place, local community groups, if you sell locally, or if you sell to a particular niche groups that you can find that would contain people who like your particular product. But like Shannon says, if you go into those groups, go into them with the idea that you're building relationships, and maybe at some point you can drop, oh, hey, I make this thing. Or, oh, hey, this customer, we were talking yesterday about sneaky ways to sell too. And there are sneaky ways that you can sell in groups, even if they say you can't sell. And I shouldn't be telling you this, so hopefully no group owners will come after me. But I mean, there are things you can do like, hey, this customer just said this really nice thing about this thing that I made, and I just wanted to share it with you. Or, you know, I just got this new piece of equipment and I'm so excited, I thought I'd tell you about it in case you've never heard of this, or whatever. There are ways that you can sneak in little tidbits about products you've made or equipment you own or things you can do without blatantly selling. And that might be a whole video cast on its own, how to sell without selling. I'd watch that. But I think, yes, I've kind of gone on a lot about this question, Shannon, but I think it's a good one. So I thank you for asking it. I think it definitely could help if done the right way. I think if you go in there and tromp around with your big buy my stuff shoes, then probably not. But if you go in there with the attitude that I'm here to be a part of my community and build relationships, then I think it could definitely work. I'm seriously thinking about doing it now, honestly. How to sell without selling, either an ebook or a video. I don't know, but I'll have to think about it. But could be interesting because there are a lot of ways to sell without really selling, which is interesting. And this all leads nicely into the next thing that I wanted to talk about that people should start working on at the end of the year so they're ready for next year. And that's create a community. And a lot of people, when I say create a community, I'm laughing at Shannon because she said, yes, do it, video. Well, next week might be open. It's possible. I'll think about it. If I can come up with enough stuff, I'll do it. I think I can. So I'll have to see if I can put it together. But anyway, getting back to what I was talking about, creating a community. And when I say that, a lot of people think I mean start a group. Not against starting a group if a group makes sense to you. But the thing about starting a group is it has to be moderated. You have to create content for it. A group is a lot of work. You have to be sure that you're answering questions and responding to comments and making sure that the group is abiding by whatever rules you set and that everyone's being civil, and you have to adjudicate any arguments that might happen. There's a lot of stuff that goes with a group. The group that I have, which I will just pop this up here because, you know, why not? Women in Garment Decoration, if you haven't seen it, if you haven't been there. We have 2 admins and 2 moderators. And we have a really good group, so we don't run into a lot of problems, but there's still stuff that comes up. So you need to be aware of that if you decide that your vehicle for building community is creating your own group, that a group takes a lot of work, or can take a lot of work, and can potentially have a lot of pitfalls. It can also be super great. I mean, I love the Women in Garment Decoration group. I'm so incredibly proud of that group and so grateful for the women who are there. We got really lucky. I have known people who have groups that have just crashed and burned horribly, or had, you know, dissension and people splitting off from the group and going off and making their own group and doing all this stuff. So it's not necessarily always the best idea, but you don't have to start a group to create a community. A community is any group of people that you interact with regularly, who respond to things on your page and you respond to things on their page, and who might buy products from you or maybe not, but maybe they'll share what you say. It's basically like, if you were at a party, what circle are you standing in? Who are you hanging out with? If you go to a trade show, who are you going to go have dinner with? Same kind of thing. That's your community. So community doesn't necessarily have to be all the people in the same group. It could be all the people who cluster around a particular like. Your community could be the people who live in the area that you live in. Your community could be people who like the same things that you like. Your community could be, it could be stitched together any way you want. When I first started working in Enmart, which was in 2006, social media was still ramping up. But one of the things I knew when Enmart became a company, which was, well, 2008 about was when Enmart became a company, I knew that I had to build a community for Enmart. And at that point, Facebook groups, I don't even know if Facebook groups were a thing yet, but if they were, they weren't really being used that much. And I didn't really want to do a group at that point because we had a lot of things going on. So I just went and looked for people that I thought were either prominent in embroidery or sublimation or screen printing, who was doing stuff that was interesting in the industry. That's how I found 2 regular guys. I met Aaron Montgomery because he used to work at Coastal Business and he had the equivalent position there to the one that I had at Enmart. And gradually, and Eric Campbell, I met because we both were writing for a magazine called Stitches, which became Wearables, which no longer exists. So I started meeting people and then building this community of like-minded people who were trying to do good things for the industry. I'm not the only one that built that community, obviously, but and the idea was, okay, how can I find a group of people or create a group of people that are trying to do good things for the industry, that have expertise in the areas that would need the supplies that Enmart sells, which were sublimation supplies and embroidery supplies and that sort of thing. And how can I generate buzz and interest in our company, the company? Wasn't easy. It was 14 years because I stopped working for Enmart in April of 2020. So that was, and my anniversary date was in January. So that was 14 years and a couple of months of consistently posting every day, watching for Enmart being mentioned and saying thank you. Sorry, I gotta grab a posting in groups and responding to comments and answering questions and writing articles and doing podcasts and speaking at seminars and doing all these things to try to really get the name out there and keep it in front of people. I mean, I benefited. I got a career out of it, and a career that I really enjoy. But it was also a lot of work. It was also a lot of hard work. And, building a community takes dedication. And building a community and keeping yourself in front of people takes work. Circles back to what we were talking about yesterday. Doing social media well takes work. That's just how it is. Now, the neat part of it, because apparently I live in the 1940s, the interesting part of this is that you put the work in and then you start seeing the results, and eventually you get to a point where you don't have to prod the mention, or you don't have to be the one who says, hey, this is a really cool thing. You get advocates for your business who will do that for you because they like you, because they're part of your community, because you've done favors for them and they've done favors for you, and you're all mutually supporting each other. That's huge. That's huge. So community is really, really important. Having people have your back and you have theirs is really important. And it needs to be like, not just, hey, like my page and I'll like yours. There needs to be a connection. There needs to be a real community. I mean, we talked yesterday a little bit about the whole I'll like yours and you like mine and all that, and whether that's really effective or not. Jury's out on that a little bit. I don't think it's as effective as the social media platforms want you to believe it is. And I tend to be of the school that it's about quality of people following and liking you rather than quantity. But you can make the argument either way for that. So create a community, because that gets you, start building your community now so you can hit next year running with a community that's already in place and is ready to work with you and hopefully to buy your items. Shannon says, community is my weak link. I really need to work on this. Community is a weak link for a lot of people because it's not how people think about social media. They tend to focus really on their accounts, and they don't look at it as a quid pro quo sort of situation. And they don't look at it as, how can Aaron Montgomery says a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think he's really accurate about that. So it's, how can I build a community that helps all of us do better? And it's worth the effort. I mean, I am hugely glad that I spent the time I did to become part of the decorators community and to get to know people and to do the work that I do. It's been a lot of hours. It's been a lot of time. But the payoff has been people that I really consider friends and people that I trust, and people that, when I said I'm starting my own business, said, what can I do to help you? Can I spread the word? Can I have you on my podcast? Can I, how can I help? So there's a real benefit there. And the caveat to that is that I would say the same thing to them and have said the same thing to them when I have been in a position to do something. So it has to be a two-way street. It can't be, I'm going to build a community so everybody will help me. It has to be, I'm going to build a community so I can help everybody else. And hopefully what goes around comes around, kind of thing. But you got to build the community just for the joy of building the community, not necessarily because you're plotting world domination. The world domination is not a bad thing. I'm just saying. I've thought about it a time or two. Anyway, the next thing you need to do, if you're looking at being ready to hit the ground running in 2021, is get rid of your dead accounts. And the reason that I say this is because a lot of people, when they're starting out on social media, think they have to be everywhere. Or they have a few accounts that they're doing fairly well with, and then they read an article or they see a video or something. It says everybody has to be on Instagram. So they go start an Instagram account. Or TikTok is the new thing. If you're not on TikTok, you're a dinosaur. So they start a TikTok account. Now, if whatever the account is that you start generates interest and attracts people who want to buy what you have to sell, and you can keep up with multiple accounts and make them work, then yay, keep the account and, run with it. But take a look and decide if the account's actually worth it. Is it really generating any business for you? Is it getting you any notice? Are people interacting with it? Is it of any use at all? If it's not, get off the platform. And there's no place where everybody has to be. You need to be where your customers are, where your audience is. That's the only place you need to be. Everywhere else is just a waste of time, basically. So at the end of the year, really honestly assess your accounts and see what's driving traffic to my website, what's generating orders, where are my customers interacting with me, where am I seeing the most interaction, and even something as simple as what account is easiest for me to use, or what account do I most enjoy posting on. And a lot of times the accounts you enjoy posting on are the accounts that you get interaction on, the ones where people comment back and talk to you and like what you say. So, if you have accounts too where you started an account and you didn't get a lot of interaction, so you just kind of let the account die. At this point, if the account's been there for a while and you haven't really done anything with it, it's probably not worth trying to resuscitate it. It's just easier to just get rid of it. Because if you don't have the motivation to keep the account going, you can try to talk yourself into it, but it's not going to be a very good account, honestly. Because if you have to force yourself to post, then you have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy your community. You have to enjoy what you're doing. You have to care about what you're putting up. You have to put some effort into it. You can't just put up a stock picture of a t-shirt and a price and a note and a link to your website and think that you're actually doing something. Because most of the people who do that do it for a couple of weeks and then go, well, social media doesn't work. Social media isn't useful. And it's not that social media isn't useful. It's just that they didn't put anything up that anybody wanted, or they didn't talk to the right people, or they didn't put, I said this yesterday, but it still holds true. Think about if you went to Walmart, say, and there was somebody standing on a table with a bullhorn and they're yelling at you to buy this particular item. And that's all they're saying. They're not saying please. They're not saying thank you. They're not telling you why the item's good. They're not telling you anything. They're just saying, you need to buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. Are you going to buy it? Probably not. Because if nothing, I will say I'm contrary enough that would annoy me enough that even if I really wanted whatever the thing was, I wouldn't buy it because that would annoy me. So get rid of your dead accounts. Get rid of the accounts that you haven't put a lot of effort into. Because if you're not putting effort into them, what's the likelihood that you will in the new year? And the other half of this is take a look at, reassess where your audience is and maybe try a new platform. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's really not, because I think audiences change. Where you're finding customers and having the most success in one time period may not be the same place in another time period. Or your products could change, the things that you can offer may change, the processes that you can do may change. So you need to look at all that from the standpoint of, okay, who am I needing to talk to now? Who's my audience now versus who my audience was 6 months ago or a year ago, or before I got the new printer, or before I got the new cutter, or before I learned how to sublimate, or whatever it is. Because once you examine your audience, you may discover that where you are is not necessarily where you need to be anymore. Maybe you have a decoration process that lends itself really well to TikTok. Or maybe you have a decoration process that it would be interesting to a group that you haven't really tried to reach before, and so you should be on Instagram. So you need to make sure that you do your research, obviously, that you know who your target market is for whatever you have that's new and different. And then if it seems like it's merited, try something new and see what happens. And the next thing on the list is just start watching others in your industry. And originally, I used to say start watching your competitors, but it should be more than your competitors. Even if it's somebody that you don't sell directly against, if there's somebody in the industry that you're really hearing a buzz about, if a lot of people are talking about a particular company for whatever the reason, then you might want to follow their profiles and see what they're doing and how they're generating the buzz and why they're getting talked about. And it doesn't have to be, a lot of the techniques that people use on social media can translate regardless of what the product is or what the decoration technique is or whatever it is. So again, this is something that takes time because you have to spend the time actually going and analyzing these accounts and figuring out why they're doing well. But the stuff that you learn can be very helpful. So, and it doesn't have to be a ton. Maybe spend a little time looking at whoever your community is and find the top 5 companies that they're mentioning and then go follow those companies. You don't have to follow 40 companies or 100 companies. You can follow 2. But just follow someone that you're hearing a lot about that maybe you're not already following and see what you can learn from what they're doing, because they must be doing something that's working because people are talking about them. And the more you can learn from what others are doing and translate to your own page, then the more buzz you're going to generate. And then eventually people will be following you to see what you're doing. Another thing, and I think one of the most important things that people neglect on social media, and a resolution that maybe everybody needs to make for the new year, is to be more responsive. One of the things that is a huge pet peeve for me, and one of the things that I think is saddest, is when you go to somebody's business page and there's people commenting and nobody's paying attention to it. Or there's people asking questions and the answer shows up 5 days later. And again, time consuming, I know. But the more responsive you are, the better able you are to build your community, and the better your profile is going to perform for you. So it is worth the time, definitely. And I could go on for quite a while longer because I had a whole other article I was going to talk about, but we're almost at an hour right now and my voice is starting to go. So I'm going to say thank you all for being here. I really, really appreciate it. I hope this was helpful. Next week may be ways of selling without selling. Well, I'll have to give that some thought and see if I can come up with enough content. If I can, I'll let you know. Anyway, like I said, I hope this was helpful today. I appreciate you watching as always. I very much appreciate the support. And I will talk to you next Wednesday. Bye.